Hello and welcome to another episode of the Under Center podcast. I am your host, Daragh, and I am joined by two members of the Proclaimers tribute band, 804 Kilometers, Fionn and Jake Woolhead. Guys, how are we doing?
Wonderful.
Yeah, can't complain. Living the dream as always.
Excellent stuff. On today's show, we are going to be giving our final thoughts on the AFC and NFC championship games over the weekend, and we'll be talking about more potential quarterback moves over the offseason and where we think they will end up. Lads, normally this week we would be used to getting ready to see the playoffs and some of the activities that they have going on in Florida. But while it is still going ahead this year, it is not in person, obviously due to COVID. So it's going to be a virtual Pro Bowl. Do you think that is going to entice you to maybe watch it a little more than other years?
I ain't gonna watch it at all. I mean, I very barely even watch the actual thing. The challenges are a bit fun, but I generally don't watch the game.
Yeah, I'm the same. I barely watch it to begin with, and watching a lot of lads play Madden on the PlayStation is not a very appealing prospect for me. So I think I'm going to give it a miss.
Yeah, no, I can barely watch myself playing Madden, so I can't see myself now over the week spending time watching other people play it. Now, unless there's some sort of freak out that goes viral, then obviously we'll watch it. But in terms of that,
I'll catch it afterwards though on social media. I don't need to watch it live.
No, definitely won't be watching it live. But one thing we will be watching live in a little over a week and a half is going to be the Super Bowl, because now we have our two teams that are going to contest the Super Bowl on February 7th in Tampa Bay. One of those is actually the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the other team is the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we get into the games, guys, if you are watching on YouTube, could you please like this video and subscribe to the Dynamo Podcast Network, I should say. There is not just our podcast there, but there are so many other great shows to watch or listen to. If you like football, there's the Upper Tier Podcast. If you like wrestling, there's the Four Pod Men. If you like some pop culture interviews, you have, of course, the Dynamo's Dozen podcast. And actually, we just premiered a new podcast this week for all you boxing and MMA fans, called the Creeping Southpaw podcast, just in time obviously for when Conor McGregor got his head thumped off there last weekend. Also, if you would rather just listen to us on the go, you can find us on Spotify and all good podcasting platforms. Just follow or search, I should say, the Dynamo Podcast Network, and you'll see us there. Also, go to our social pages, facebook.com/Undercenter Podcast, Twitter @UnderCenterPod, Instagram @UnderCenterPod. We're also on TikTok @UnderCenterPod. There's been really good discussions on our videos there in the last week or so. You should go and check them out, and make sure, if you are searching for us and you use the American spelling of center, don't. It is actually spelled with an R-E instead of an E-R. Now, we will go and we'll catch up on last week's games. Like I said, we have our Super Bowl matchup. It's going to be the Chiefs going up against the Bucs on February 7th. The Bucs sealed their place by beating Green Bay 31 points to 26. The main headlines from this game, I guess, is the Packers' decision to kick the field goal when they were 8 points down with a little over 2 minutes left. The play beforehand, though, it seemed like Aaron Rodgers had a clear run to the end zone to potentially have an opportunity to tie up the game. My thoughts from this game, though, was, even though as good as Tom Brady was on Sunday, and this is not a critique, I know I'm setting up for a critique because he played like he was 33, not 43. The real star of that team was the defense on Sunday. They gave Aaron Rodgers nightmares for the last two nights, I am sure. Gave him no time in the pocket really to throw at all. They showed why they are the number one rushing defense in the league as well. Aaron Jones, I know he went out with an injury, but then when AJ Dillon and Jamal Williams came in, they were pretty much non-effective apart from an odd run here or there. The killer, I think, in this game particularly as well was the Scotty Miller touchdown just before halftime. And then as the second half started, a very quick turnover by the Packers, giving the ball back to Green Bay, who then scored another touchdown through Cameron Brate to go 28 points to 10 in front. Another big storyline from this game, and I think everyone knows where I'm going to go next, is the defensive PI call at the end of the game, which won the Bucs the game. I know it was the right call, and I don't think anybody disputes that this was the right call. But we saw throughout the previous 59 minutes, the officials obviously decided pre-game that they were going to let this game flow. They weren't going to be the center of attention in this. They were just going to let it go. These iffy calls, they will err on the side of just let them play. So why then didn't they do it for this last call? I think, which is the issue obviously everyone is having, especially Packers fans are having at the moment. So I feel, yes, it's the right call. You should make that call. But why weren't you making those calls X amount of times previous in the game? I don't know. But guys, what did you think, especially about the last call in that? Fionn, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the referees called that because they were sick of looking at King get absolutely torched the entire game. And they kind of said, here, man, you're useless. You don't get away with these holding calls. He was sloppy all night. He got roasted, like you mentioned, for the Miller touchdown right at the end of the half, which is just unacceptable. Personally, play on the defensive side, you have to know your situations. Like, there's 2 seconds left on the clock. A 40-yard reception is fine. A 50-yard reception is not fine. That's in for a touchdown. So that was confusing. He had a terrible game all day. Amos as well really let them down. I think the defensive backs of the Packers in general did not have a good game. One big thing, Amos, he dropped a clear interception right in the middle of the pitch. Now it was down maybe the 30-yard line of the Packers, and they did get the ball back on a punt the next play. But I think what's overlooked a little bit is the momentum shift of what an interception does. Yes, they got the ball back already, but it's a huge boost of confidence. It's a real momentum swinger in the games. We know from playing how these little things can all add up. So I think that was a big kicker for the Packers as well, that really let them down. And you never know when you get those interceptions, you never know how many yards a random block, someone trips, someone falls. They're not used to making tackles. Who knows how far that goes? So that was another thing that really let them down. As much as you said, and I agree with you, the kick was a strange decision. Aaron Rodgers, I think, forced that decision by not running for it. Personally, I'm devastated because I had money on him to get a rushing touchdown in the game. He didn't do it. But I think even if he gets it 2-3 yards from the goal line, I think Matt LaFleur thinks about that in a whole other situation. So I think for us, hindsight is 20/20, right? If he goes for it and doesn't make it, you're going, well, look, that was a chance to put points on the board. I know it was an 8-score game, but 3 points is definitely closer than 8. You're still relying on it.
I don't necessarily believe that now. I don't.
You don't agree with me there?
I don't agree with that logic in saying that if you didn't go for it, well, then you still could have gotten 3 points. 3 points still means that they're down a touchdown either way. You are there on the, I think they were 7 yards out or something like that. You're 7 yards from the goal line. You probably it's obviously we're never going to get that close again. And if they didn't get it, then at least Tampa Bay would get a turnover on downs on the 7-yard line so that they can use their timeouts. The ball is kicked back to them and they still get favorable position to have a chance. But they kicked the point, gave the ball back to, I know they tried the onside kick, but with the rules now, you can almost never get the ball. Although we did see it in the Bills game, but in weighing up all that, like field position wise and stuff, it just made more sense, I believe, just to go for it.
I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers as well. That's a huge benefit in these situations. The man doesn't miss. We know he can run the ball. Okay, he didn't in the situation just before. And maybe I think a little bit was, like you mentioned in your rundown, was that Bucs defense was giving Aaron Rodgers no time at all. And maybe Matt LaFleur just didn't believe he would get the time to even put the ball in the end zone where they could win. But for me personally, I think my takeaway is that call is not what lost the Packers the game. King being asleep at the end of the second half is what lost the Packers the game.
Yeah, no, I think a big part of it is it's like surrendering that field goal or giving up the 3 points or just getting the 3 points instead of going for it. You don't win playoff games by being conservative. You just don't. You need to be creative, and you need to be aggressive in situations like that. Even if they had to just run some play, there's probably another possibility that Aaron Rodgers could open up that, like, run through the center and get that 7 yards like he could have on that third down. But I still think the way, like, the Buccaneers were playing in the second half, like, maybe you were hoping for something like that where you could capitalize on maybe a slow or inept offense, but it just wasn't happening. Like, the Buccaneers D had Aaron Rodgers all the way through that game, and it was just, you can't blame it on Aaron Rodgers, but there was 3 interceptions by the Packers defense and 7 points, or I think, put up in total from them. 3 interceptions, like, that's not what. Can't really focus, like, can't really say that's the only thing, but that's a big part of it. Like, if you get 3 interceptions, you really need to be capitalizing on them. Maybe it doesn't make a difference, but it gives you a better chance of winning that game. I was just like, it was a battle of 2 quarterbacks. One played well in the first half, one played really well in the second half. It was like they just swapped throughout that game. But man, it was scary watching JPP and Shaq Barrett. They just went off on that. I think they had a backup right tackle, the Packers did, and they really took advantage of that guy there. I don't know his name, but it was really hard watching him try to block them too.
It wasn't just the right tackle as well. I think this was the first game since the news came out, but they really missed David Bakhtiari in this game as well. He was such a big miss, and that was obviously one of the main reasons why, like you said, JPP and Shaq Barrett had such a big game, but like that, if he did run for it and he didn't get it, at least say if he got to the 3 or 4 yard line, he's still like a few yards closer than he was again to go for it, which means he could have went for it. I just feel there was so, like, in the game currently where coaches are using analytics so much, I think that it just made more sense just to go for it. And I still don't know why, but like you were saying, Fionn, fully agree. It wasn't Aaron Rodgers that lost this game. It was the defense that lost this game for Green Bay, especially King and Amos to a lesser extent. It was a little sloppy though for a bit too. I think, was it 3 interceptions in total from Brady, and was it 2 in the end for Aaron Rodgers as well?
Brady was playing like an Irish centre half, just hoofing balls up the sideline at some point.
Punting.
I'm not sure what he was seeing. I think he saw Evans as a guy who could make plays and just go up and get balls. And Evans, by his own high standards, didn't have a particularly brilliant game. I know he caught a touchdown early in the game, but he had a few drops that I thought, especially in playoff games, are balls that you have to catch that really could have buried the Packers when they had them down right at the start of that third quarter. Just before the Packers started to get a foothold back in the game. So, yeah, that was interesting to see. I think the Chiefs defenders will be licking their lips a little bit, hoping he keeps that form up.
Definitely, for sure. So we'll move on from the Bucs game. So they are going to be the first team ever to play a home Super Bowl, and their opponents will be the Kansas City Chiefs after they had to overcome an early 9-0 deficit against the Bills to win by 38 points to 24. Jake, what are your main thoughts from this game?
That was a great game, I thought. Like, Patrick Mahomes apparently has a turf toe that he might need to get surgery on after the Super Bowl. He didn't look like he was hampered by that at all. He made some nice little runs to get first downs or even them extra yards. But the Chiefs were just taking what the Bills were giving them. A lot of time it was a Travis Kelce for 10 or 11 yards. And then it was the odd time it was Tyreek Hill for 50 or 60 yards. Whatever the Bills were giving them defensively, it was just, the Chiefs had the answer and there was no stopping them. And now I thought there was might have been a momentum shift on the Mecole Hardman fumble on the kickoff, but they still didn't look great for the Bills. They scored after that, and then it was 24 points. So if you take away 6 off of that, it's not a great showing for the Bills, especially a team that we were all saying were great offensively. They had like Diggs and stuff, but they weren't. We also, they hadn't got the run game. And I don't think that was effective during that game either. I thought the Bills needed to have these long drives to take Mahomes off the field, and you have to get them scores at the end of them long drives. At the end of it, the Bills could, like, on some of them were getting just field goals. You have to match the Chiefs in scoring. You can't just take this is a conservative play calling where it really should be an aggressive, especially against an explosive offense like the Chiefs. We can all agree that you have to match them, because if you don't, you're just going to be left in the dirt, because they can score at any time. Like, they just open up anything, and there's always a goal for them. That's like, that game was good though. I really enjoyed watching that game.
Yeah, I didn't have the privilege of watching it myself. I had to go to bed, so I didn't get to see it. But one thing that stood out for me is a lot of talk these days about Tom Brady reaching his 10th championship. Of course, that's a huge achievement. I think 19 years he's been playing, and he's reached the championship 10 of those times. They're saying that's a record that never will be broken. But ironically, I think the guy with the best chance to do it is the guy who's going to be playing him in the Super Bowl. Mahomes is a phenomenal athlete. I think he makes the Chiefs so dangerous. This is his second time in 3 years going to the Super Bowl. So he's an extremely talented player, like you mentioned, Jake. And for me, two things that stand out. As you said, for a young quarterback, he is excellent at taking what the defense gives him and has the ability to do damage when you leave that open, but is not a bit like, say, Lamar Jackson or some of these other young quarterbacks that are pushing the ball down the field necessarily. And two, I think he really is the reason that this Chiefs team is so good. I'm not sure that they're dynastic necessarily if you take them out like the Patriots, where Brady, of course, fantastic at the Patriots, but it's very easy to make the case that that was a phenomenal team he had around him all those years. So I think that's what really gives Mahomes the chance of getting to a lot of Super Bowls in the next few years.
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing I noticed in that game was that there was a lot of pettiness. I don't know if there was a lot of chirping between players that led to like little fights and stuff. So obviously it was kind of getting to the Bills that they were going against such a powerhouse of the Chiefs. I think even Josh Allen kind of got in on the action where he threw the ball against I think Okafor's head or something like that. And it led to a big tussle in the middle. So there was a lot of high emotion in that game. And I think it got to Josh Allen a little bit.
Yeah, in a short space of time, Okafor did a few questionable timing hits on Josh Allen. I think by that second one, he threw the ball. I think there was about 50 penalties in total on that play alone, and they just somehow offset. So they just left them to it, which was fine by me, because they ended up scoring a field goal in that, and I needed that for my bet because I had a field goal in every quarter. So, winner. But yeah, just to bounce a little bit off what you said, Jake, we talked about it last week, and I mentioned it when we were doing our preview, that the Bills were going to have to find a running game in the next week to have a chance, because they needed these long drives. They didn't have that running game. They only could throw, and they had that touchdown in the first quarter. After that, Nicole Hardman fumble, and then they didn't score another touchdown then until garbage time in the fourth. That's not going to beat the Chiefs. We've mentioned it on our show here as well. All of us have. To beat the Chiefs, you have to be on top of your game. You have to be hitting that, not 100%, 120%. You got to find stuff that you didn't think that you had as a team, and you've got to catch the Chiefs on a bad day. None of those things happened. Like the Chiefs played how we expected the Chiefs to play, and they just ran over the Bills in the end. And I hope it's not going to be too demoralizing a defeat for the Bills going forward, because they have shown this season that they are a good team and they have a good squad of players there that they can challenge going forward, and then they have the potential, obviously barring what the Jets and Miami do in this draft, and to a lesser extent, obviously the Patriots, because they have quarterback questions of what they're going to do, but they do have a good opportunity now to sort of take a stranglehold of the AFC East and to have their own sort of like mini dynasty and compete every year, which I'm sure we'd all love to see as well. So, it was just one, like we said with Cleveland last week, it was one step too far for them against the Chiefs. The Bills, same this week, one step too far for them. the Chiefs were definitely the right side to be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. And, you know, Patrick Mahomes has a chance to win his second Super Bowl in 2 years. I don't know if you saw at the start of the game, they showed his boot, his special boot that he was wearing because of that turf toe. He had to wear a size extra because he had a special guard for his toe to stop turf toe. So, you know, anything that's possible to keep him on the field for sure. But I'm sure it won't affect him going into the actual Super Bowl game itself. So, guys, before we move on, anything else to add over the weekend before we go on to quarterbacks?
No, I think you're right. It definitely, if you're Bills, you got to sort out that run game. Anytime you have Allen as your top rusher, that's something you need to sort out. We'll talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers and his somewhat interesting comments now in the next section. So move on to that. I think if you're the Bucs, very interesting, record-breaking for both your quarterback and for the team playing in the Super Bowl. I think they're a little bit disappointed. It's the 1 year where playing in a home Super Bowl probably makes no difference whatsoever. You'll have a few Miami nurses in there cheering you on, and that's about it. So it's going to be it's always the worst week of the season. I think this 1 week off before the Super Bowl, you just got to sit, wait, analyze. You've got 2 weeks nearly to pick which bets you're going to go on, what kind of yards are going to be thrown. And I think it's important for the players as well. They go through the same thing. They have to process all this, get through it. And it's going to be interesting to see who does it. The Buccaneers, Tom Brady, okay, he's used to it, but how are the rest of them used to it? That'll be interesting to see, because the Chiefs have been there, done that, and most of the team came back, as we know. So maybe they'll have a little bit of an edge, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it is a little. Guess it's a little sucky for Tampa Bay fans that can't all go. Now I know they said there's 22,500 able to go to the stadium. Like you were saying, 7,500 are going to be vaccinated frontline workers as a thank you. But I don't think they're all from the Miami area though. I think each team got a selection of tickets. So from that area, so like there'll be some ones from Washington, there'll be some from New York, there'll be some from Seattle, like there'll be some from everywhere, which is actually, I have to say, is a pretty good move from the NFL to do that, just to show their appreciation, obviously, for everything that frontline workers have done during this pandemic, not just for keeping the league going, but just in a wider sense of keeping everyone safe and healthy. But we are going to move on to the next topic. And it is quarterback news. It's more Deshaun Watson news, but it's not just Deshaun Watson news, because this offseason has the potential to be quite the quarterback carousel. So many question marks surround so many players. So we're going to go through a couple of names and we're going to give our views on where they might end up for the start of the 2021 season. So I'm going to give you guys a batch of names. I'm going to say where I think they're going to end up. And then I'm going to open the floor up to you guys to see if you disagree with any and where you think they will go. So I'm going to go Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, and Dak Prescott to start. So Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to end up with the Jets for the start of next year. Aaron Rodgers is going to stay at the Packers, and I think that's pretty much confirmed now. I think he was on Pat McAfee's show there today, and he confirmed that he is actually staying at the Packers. He says he can't see any reason why he won't be there next year. Matt Stafford, I think he's going to end up at the Colts. I think that'll be a good move for him now to probably challenge for championships, especially, well, even just divisional championships. And Dak Prescott, I fancy going back to the Cowboys. I think he will get his contract in the end. Maybe he might get franchise tags again. We don't know. But guys, what do you think? Jake, I'll open the floor up to you first. Is there any you disagree with there?
Yeah, I think Watson is either staying with the Texans, but that doesn't look very likely at this stage. But I'd like to see him on the Niners. I think he would do very well on the Niners. Of course, they have to get rid of Jimmy G, but if you pick between Jimmy G and Deshaun Watson, I think we all know who we're all picking there. But yeah, no, the list seemed pretty sound to me other than that.
Well, I'm with you, Daragh. I think he is going to stay, or he is going to go with the Jets, which looks like the most likely, judging by the media. I put Stafford to another Cowboys-based team, and that's the Texans. I thought that might be an interesting move to replace Watson, based on two things. Essentially, Matt Stafford is the statistical average for the NFL. He is very bland. He's like oatmeal. Now, he was on a terrible team, so how much can you judge on that? Difficult to know. But the Texans are a useless, bland team who haven't been able to spice up Watson's greatest time in his career, as we talked about last week. So to me, it seems like a completely logical move for the Texans to go and get a middle-aged, middle-of-the-pack Matt Stafford.
Middle-aged, middle of the pack, who was at one stage the highest paid quarterback in the league. So Detroit obviously liked him somewhat. It is interesting, though, because you would think if Deshaun Watson was going to go to the Jets, that Sam Darnold would go the other way and he would be as part of the Texans. But I like that take. It's an interesting take to see Matt Stafford go to the Texans. Now, whether he will choose to go from one struggling franchise to another, or, you know, is another question.
My thought there, as I mentioned with his stats, is he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. Now, he can try and argue the tape looks better than the stats does, and I'm sure the coaches have kept an eye on it, but it's going to be difficult to convince a better team than the Lions that you can quarterback their team better than you did the Lions. Because like we've mentioned before on lots of different shows, what separates the good quarterbacks from the really great quarterbacks is the great quarterbacks can drag very, very average teams along with them. And unfortunately for Stafford, I do think he's a very good quarterback and hard as nails, but he really didn't elevate that Lions team beyond where they were restricted to. So, and that I think is going to work in his detriment really in this negotiations.
Okay. I would just like to see him at the Colts because I'd like to see what Frank Reich could be able to do with him. We saw what Frank Reich can do with, you know, Carson Wentz, and we've seen what Carson Wentz has been after he left. Even what he got out of Phillip Rivers in this past season for a 38-year-old quarterback who, you know, questions about whether he should have retired before this season starts and why did the Colts go for him. So, you know, I think that is a good move, and I think we could see if Matt Stafford go to the Colts, I think it could be a really good move for both sides.
I think there's also another connection with the Colts as well. Didn't the QB coach become the offensive coordinator for the Colts or something like that from the Lions to the Colts? So I think there's some connection there for Stafford to go that way.
Okay. Was it Darryl Bevel? Didn't he go to the Jaguars? Didn't he?
Darryl Bevel did.
Yeah. He was the old OC. At Detroit. We'll move on to the next batch of names, and it's going to be Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Fionn, I'll let you start with this one. Where do you think those four names are going to end up?
Yeah, so we mentioned Darnold and the other one that it would probably be a straight swap Jets for Watson. And I mentioned, well, maybe they might take Stafford in there. And if that happens, I was thinking, well, then if Miami is truly not happy with Tua, like the thoughts have been suggested, maybe Darnold goes to Miami then as a kind of a replacement for Tua. Wentz, I think, stays and starts. I just feel like they're paying too much money for this guy. Jared Goff, I think he's going to stay with the Rams, and that's mostly because there's nobody else around. The Rams don't have a high enough pick to go after a quarterback, and I'm not sure who they can lure. They do have a lot of assets. So if Aaron Rodgers was to move somewhere, maybe they have the trade capital to lure him away from the Packers, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then Garoppolo, I think, again, he's going to stay with the 49ers because who is there really to replace him? They're not a particularly good team at the moment, and I don't think they have a lot of allure for any quarterback looking to upgrade their team from where they are at the moment.
Yeah, I wouldn't change too much out of your list. I think Darnold stays with the Jets though, and I think they're not getting rid of Garoppolo, but they should probably look into one of these other options here because he, like you said, Fionn, there's some quarterbacks that elevate teams like that, and Jimmy Garoppolo is not that person to elevate a team up. Like I'd like to see Watson on the 49ers because I'd like to see what Shanahan is the head coach. I'd like to see what he can do with a quarterback like Watson. I don't know if that'll happen.
Hand it off.
Say again?
Show him how to hand it off. That's also the reason why Aaron Rodgers is not going to the Rams, because Aaron Rodgers is not going to hand it off for every play as well under Sean McVay. But anyway, Jake, sorry I interrupted you there.
That's okay. No, I hadn't got too much to change from Fionn's list there. I would like Watson on the 49ers. I think the creativity there would be kind of exciting and a little bit explosive. But obviously that's going to be hard to tell. That's going to be a long off season, I think.
Yeah, I said Sam Darnold is going to go to the Texans as part of the Watson trade to the Jets. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff are going to stay at their teams because their contracts are so costly, and no team is going to send draft picks to those teams for those players. No way. Jimmy Garoppolo, I said to the Patriots, if 49ers can get a replacement. So, Jimmy G back in New England with Belichick, stranger things have happened. But like I said, only if the 49ers can get a replacement, because Nick
Have you got a replacement in mind, Daragh?
I actually don't. Now, maybe they can get some draft capital and use it in a pick, but not in my list here of the players that we have. So it could, I could be wrong, and it could be they may get Matt Stafford in and then they send Jimmy Garoppolo to the Patriots, or like Jake, you were saying, they could get Watson in and send Jimmy Garoppolo to the Patriots. But we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, the Watson one, I'm not buying into too much at the moment, because I don't think that the 49ers have the draft capital available to send to the Texans that they would want to part with Watson for. But sure, look, crazier things have happened, and there's a long time until the draft in April anyway. So the next four names is interesting ones, because they're kind of like we're terrible names. Yeah, where it's like I don't want to be disrespectful and say scraping the bottom of the barrel, but we haven't hit the bottom of the barrel yet. This is scraping like the final, the third quarter of the barrel. Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater, Mitchell Trubisky, Jameis Winston. Jake, let me know, where do you think these four names are going to end up?
I can see that you saved the best for last, obviously.
Oh, that's I have one left after this. Don't you worry.
You gave me the good crop of quarterbacks to pick anyway. So for me, I was thinking Newton is he didn't impress, obviously, on the Patriots. He needs to go somewhere. I don't think he's going to get a starting job. I think he probably goes to a team where he competes for a quarterback starting job, and it's more just to push the starting quarterback. So maybe he goes to some like the Bears if they got rid of Foles or Trubisky, or maybe the Dolphins if they just want to back up for Tua and they get rid of Fitzmagic. Who knows? Next on the list, I have Bridgewater. It's probably a similar story for Bridgewater. I think he's going to maybe stay with the Panthers, but they might get a quarterback and he's just going to be like that bridge quarterback where he just starts the few games until that new quarterback's ready, or something along the lines for that. With Trubisky, it's the same for Bridgewater. For Trubisky, I don't think he done enough for the Bears this season, even though they got quite far, but it was a lot of Foles, a lot of Trubisky. I don't think he'd done enough to warrant just getting his job back. It's not going to happen for him. And then Winston, I don't know. I was stuck in the middle for Winston because the Saints didn't believe in him enough to start him over Hill, or maybe it was just that they wanted to push up Hill's trade value or value. But I could see him staying on the Saints maybe, and if Breeze really is retiring, he could just be the starter in the same situation, and he just be get them through a season, be a transit quarterback, and get there in the end. Did you give me Fitzmagic as well? I can't remember. Okay,
no, not just yet. I told you it's not the list yet. So you just got those four names. Fionn, what you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. To be honest, Cam Newton is rubbish. I don't really care where he goes. The same with Winston. I think he's rubbish. I don't care where he goes. I don't think the Saints will keep him. I don't think he's even good enough for a backup job, really. But he's not young anymore. He has the illustrious record of 30 and 30 of 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, which is not a great one to have. Bridgewater, I agree with you. I think Rule was a first-year quarterback. I think he sticks with Bridgewater. He had a good completion rate and didn't have many touchdowns. So I think if he can push his touchdown numbers up a little bit next year, he has a chance of staying on for a while at the Panthers team. I don't think he did necessarily anything where the Panthers will be in a rush to move on from him. Certainly, if a really good quarterback lands in their lap, they're going to take that opportunity. But I don't think they're really rushing to get rid of him. And Trubisky, again, I'm not a big fan of Trubisky. I think he proved over and over again this season his deficits, let's say. He certainly has some strong aspects to his game, but there's a lot of deficits as well. When I was writing my list, I went a little bit crazy and I thought, well, Aaron Rodgers is definitely staying with the Packers, but what if? And I was like, well, what if he went to the Bears? They have a pretty good defense, some nice offense. They need to touch up a little bit. They're not miles away from what the Packers are now. My big thing with Rodgers was, why would you leave the Packers? Like, who gives you a better or even equal level of team from where you are now? And I thought maybe you can make an argument that the Bears are just about good enough to leave the Packers for. I'll probably get slaughtered for that, but I was maybe having a bit of heat stroke there beside the radiator when I was writing this list. So
I named this group the XFL group.
yeah, you're not wrong.
That is the XFL group, if you've ever seen it. This is going to be former NFL quarterbacks that are now in the XFL. No, but seriously, if they were somehow to stay in the league, the best Cam Newton can hope for is he's going to be a backup somewhere. He might even be a practice squad player. He's not. I can't see any of the 32 teams giving him a starting job next season. Teddy Bridgewater, I feel a bit for Teddy. I think he started off the season really well, high completion percentage. Like, so much of their offense runs through Christian McCaffrey, and he was missing for most of that season. So I would give him another year with the Panthers to see if he can get things working with a fully fit Christian McCaffrey. So we'll see what goes on there. Mitchell Trubisky, I actually think he's going to stay with the Bears, mostly because I think the Bears are too stupid not to realize to move on from him. I think,
well, like we've mentioned, Daragh, it's outside of the top few who most look like they're going to stick with the team. Who's floating around that you're really like, yeah, let's go out and get this guy?
Exactly. Well, there's a name coming up soon that I would actually, if I was the Bears, I'd go for instead. But I won't give the name just yet. James Winston, I think he's actually going to stay with the Saints. I think, like Jake, you summed it up perfectly. I think they'll use him as a bridging quarterback for a year, try and get someone in the next off season, maybe in the draft. We'll see what happens. Maybe if he can have a good season, can drive up his trade value and someone else can go for him. But we'll move on to the last three names in this list. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Alex Smith, and Ben Roethlisberger. Now, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, he said he just wants to play. He says this could be his last year coming in here and he doesn't want to sit on the bench. Could he be the next Bears starting quarterback?
No, he's retiring. No one's going to give him a starting job.
He's not retiring.
He's not retiring. He wants to play one more year.
If he doesn't want to, if he says he only wants to play and he'll only do it if he's a starter, he's retiring because no one is going to make him a starter.
Bears could do worse than getting Ryan Fitzpatrick in this year.
They already have worse, you could argue, but
yeah,
I feel like his mentality now is backup. He's been that for so long. He comes in and he does his jinx around, and it's amazing, and it's a terrible team that keeps going and rallying around them. But when you look back at the season, it still goes nowhere. Like the Fitz magic is more like Fitz flash bang, and then
it goes from Fitz magic to Fitz tragic very quickly.
Yes. At the start, he looks like a great magician, and then the smoke clears, and he's still standing in the middle of the stage.
Look, I remember. I will not have this much hatred to my bearded brethren in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was having a good season this year. He was, until Brian Flores decided, right, now it's time to bring the young kid in. And he actually, now to be fair, Ryan Fitzpatrick also had to come in and bail them out a couple of times as well. So, I think that if you want to give him one more year, and if, like I'm saying, maybe the Bears are going to go for a transition year next year as well, if they don't keep Trubisky. But I think Fitzpatrick's definitely better to have around in that dressing room than Trubisky and Foles next year.
Fitzpatrick might be my favorite non-giant player in the league. He's just so fun to watch. He doesn't care. You'll run into big giant linemen and he'll lie on the ground. He'll get back up and he'll do an Undertaker sit up. He's just so fun to watch. He better stay in the league.
Did you know he went to Harvard?
I did know he went to Harvard.
Do you know he went to Harvard? I think he brought it up before. But the other two names on this list, Alex Smith, I think speaking of retirement, I think he is going to retire in this offseason. Just because, just for his own health and safety, I still can't look at a Washington game with him in it and think, when I see a defender coming his way, just please don't hurt him. Just please don't hurt him. He's been through enough. And then I think it was that one, I can't remember what game it was. I think it was that Pittsburgh game where his leg was bleeding. There was just blood pouring out of his leg. And
it was the other leg.
I know it was the other leg we found out, but at the time you were thinking, oh my God, what is going on? There's a stitch or something there's a scar that's after starting to bleed again. Something's going wrong. Jesus, someone look after the poor man. But I think, look, listen, I think it'd be best for him to call it a day. He's had the comeback. He's had the season. He got to the playoffs with the team. Let's call it a day, lads.
Yeah, I think my big problem was when I got to this name, I didn't say where he would go. All I wrote was no replacement. So we're really struggling. The Washington football team is struggling. Not only do we not have a quarterback on the roster that anyone feels particularly confident about. I know we joked about Heineke and his heroics in the playoffs, but the reality is he was a backup in the AFL or the XFL. He was a backup. He didn't have a job at all for most of the season this season. So I don't think he's your man going forward. And we're just looking around. I don't think where we are at the moment has enough enticement to get even any of the mid-tier free agents we might be talking about. So I think the Washington are in trouble because we also don't have a very high draft pick for once this year. So we really screwed ourselves by being so amazing in the NFC East this year.
I think this is definitely enticing there for the team, especially if you have someone like...
Well, put it like this, Daragh. We didn't name the Washington football team on any of the places we thought any of these quarterbacks would land. So I think that says everything. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the team is definitely looking up. I think it's a winnable division we're in as well, which might get some quarterbacks interested. And the defense is young, but I think it looks much better in 3 years' time than it does right now. And that's the problem for us.
Yeah, I just wrote down WFT under Smith. I think he's just going to stay Washington football team. I don't think he's retiring this year. And I don't know necessarily if he even keeps the starting job, but I think he stays with the football team.
Okay. And Ben Rothsberger, I think he should retire, but I think he's going to play another year with the Steelers. He's going to take all, and I don't blame him. Like if you're owed $40 million next year, you stay on that team. Just do it. Yeah, I'll throw the ball 50 times a game. I'll be accurate with most of them, maybe not all of them, but $40 million. Yeah, come on.
Well, I think it came out this season suspicious as to where that elbow injury actually came from. Was it throwing footballs or was it other things that he was up to? But I think maybe now that he's found Jesus again and he's all cured of his ailments and other things, maybe he might want to become a priest instead of a quarterback, and he'll become a born again.
I feel like if he retires from the NFL, he's got a pretty good career as a Will Ferrell lookalike.
I think definitely that's true as well.
There's something in there.
That and a competitive eater, judging by the size of him. So I don't think he's going to be stuck for jobs. I hope to God he doesn't become a pundit. He's not the best speaker. If you've ever heard him have interviews, he's not a particularly interesting man. He's just a big lump of a quarterback with a suspicious past, a suspicious present, and a dubious future.
He's just got to stay with the Steelers and perform mediocre, and they're going to get the Steelers a relatively high pick.
Like you said, Daragh, throw 50 balls a game and get about 120 yards for it.
There you go. And look, listen, he was doing that this year. In the end, they started 11-0. Now, look, that was scheduled, but sure. We'll see.
Well, no, the Washington football team rattled him so hard to his core that he fell apart afterwards.
They heard your hot take and they're like, we just have to go for it. Just let's lose our first playoff game,
Speaking of hot takes, Daragh, one thing we didn't get to. Your hot take was Cam Newton to score more rushing touchdowns than Ezekiel Elliott. How about converting Mr. Cam Newton into a running back for the Patriots and letting him go off from there?
I'd put him into a fullback. I think he has the strength to be a fullback. He hasn't got the pace to be a running back. But if he wants to, that's all right, you know.
Stranger things have happened to quarterbacks.
He's too injury prone to be a running back. Let's just put it. He's gonna get one big hit and he's down.
Well, didn't he stay fit this year?
Just
He got popped a few times as well.
He's liable to get popped a few times a game. He just has that kind of head on him, you know. He runs himself into tackles a lot of the time too. I couldn't see him swapping position now, if I'm going to be honest.
I think maybe the boat has sailed on that one. I think he was going to do it. I think he would have done it by now. But sure, look, guys, I don't know if you want to possibly add any other QB names to that list that possibly should be looking over their shoulder in terms of what the team could do with them.
No, I wouldn't necessarily change that list. I think that list is fairly comprehensive on all the quarterbacks that are more than likely to move on, barring Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a story for him to get a new contract or whatever. But I don't think there's any other people that I would put on that list that I think should change.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're Jordan Love, you settle in for the long run. Not only is he not going anywhere, you're not starting anytime soon either.
Listen, I don't know if you've watched that show, Blue Mountain State. Have you ever seen it?
I've seen it. Yeah.
You know, all the players are the quarterback in that show. He just wants to be a backup quarterback because you don't get hit, you earn money. It's just a perfect job. That's exactly what Jordan Love's going to do for the next few years. He's going to have a nice little couple $1 million a year, and all he gets to do is hold a sign. That's all he gets to do.
Just have an earpiece, look busy. Just look busy. That's all he's got to do. Just make sure he's good enough to remain as the backup, but not good enough to be the starter. So, you got to get that middle ground. But one name I think that I'd like to add to this that wasn't added, and I think, Jake, you're going to love this name. Kirk Cousins.
Oh, yeah.
Or Fionn, sorry, you should love
both of us, I think.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins should definitely be looking over his shoulder and thinking, am I safe? Am I going to be here next year, boss? Am I? And when you're getting put on red and not getting any replies, I think he should worry.
I think he's paid too much on a guaranteed contract for that to be an issue for him.
Yeah, maybe they could go and get Jared Goff. He's very used to handing the ball off, and that's pretty much all the Vikings need at the moment. So, unfortunately, Goff is pretty much the only quarterback in the league who is not cheaper than Kirk Cousins a year on the current contract. So that might save Kirk Cousins where he is at the moment.
Yeah. And great job to the Rams organization for doing that, especially with no first round picks for the next few years. Oh, that's why it's good to be in the NFC West sometimes. But look, that is all the time we have before we go. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this video and channel. And please go to our social pages, facebook.com/Undercenter Podcast. Instagram @UnderCenterPod, Twitter @UnderCenterPod, and TikTok as well @UnderCenterPod. We will be back next week with our Super Bowl preview show. Can you believe we've only got one game left in the season before 6 months of nothingness? Well, we got the draft in the offseason to keep us somewhat entertained, I guess. But until then, Fionn, Jake, thank you guys so much. Stay safe, and we will speak to you next week.